Hello, welcome to Ticket to the Cup. I'm Tracy Holmes. Here we are at the pointy end of the tournament, where some of the nations that have already been eliminated are as newsworthy as those that remain. The USA is probably the biggest scalp of all, defeated by Sweden in a penalty shootout. They were the defending champions, and of the 8 previous World Cups held, the USA has never finished worse than third, and they've won it 4 times. Today we look at the influence of America in getting the women's game to this point, and in some ways, how they continue to innovate. First though, let's get the news. The greatest national team in World Cup history, the United States, was eliminated in the round of 16 by Sweden, bringing an era to an end, although its legend status remains. Australia has the opportunity to go further than it has ever gone before, playing France for a spot in the semi-finals. 2 nations that have been both surprising and inspirational bid their farewell this week, but not without a departure party like no other. Jamaica and Morocco proving the world of women's football is growing. At the last World Cup in France 2019, Hollywood actor Natalie Portman noticed a strange phenomenon. Her young son had been cheering on the women's team in the same way he'd been cheering on the men's team a year earlier. So she got to thinking, maybe the next generation weren't going to have the same sorts of issues with gender as her generation. So she rang a couple of friends, an activist and an investor, and said, how about we set up a women's-led, majority women's-owned professional team? And that's how Angel City FC was born.
I mean, we really think we were told no 100 times, but we were also asking for someone to believe in Angel City Football Club, to believe in women's football, to believe in women's sports, the same level of passion and enthusiasm and confidence that we did. So maybe it wasn't surprising that they said no. Maybe it wasn't surprising that they said no to 3 female founders, an actress, an activist, and an entrepreneur who had no background in sports. Maybe they said no to women's football. Maybe they said no to women's sports. But it was when we flipped the conversation to, we're going to build it, why don't you come along for the ride and support us, that we stopped hearing the no's.
The more noise you can make, the more impact you can make. So we've wanted to, we looked at things like the Lakers in the 90s, how you would watch the games and you'd see like Jack Nicholson was there, and who was sitting in the front row. And we have that too with our ownership group being such successful athletes, actresses, business leaders, that you're seeing stars on the pitch, but you're also seeing stars, watching the games.
There were plenty of data points that pointed to the fact that people watch women's sports. They invest in women's sports. They buy tickets for women's sports. They turn on the television to watch women's sports. And yet the narrative was nobody cared about women's sports.
There's definitely the potential that women's football can be as astronomically successful as men's football is, and that the players are valued in that way and compensated in that way.
There's a huge opportunity, right? There's actually a sleeping giant of commercial opportunity, of engaging different people into football. And so I actually almost resent that the 2 things have to happen at the same time, but there is something important in this moment where you have people saying, we're not going to take scraps anymore, we're not going to settle for less. And then those with the power are actually realizing, oh, actually, there's something here that we've been missing. We know that an investment in women's sports has a greater return on a per dollar basis in men's sports in many instances. This isn't just a values-based decision. There is value in this decision.
We're building Angel City differently. We give 10% of our sponsorship dollars back to the community. We give 1% of our ticket sales to our players. We judge victory, we judge winning about the impact in the community just as much as the W's on the pitch. And so if we can lead with impact and drive for revenue and show that this is a new way to run a business, it's a new way to drive to profitability, others will follow. We have the highest sponsorship revenue of any women's club in the world. We have the highest season ticket holder numbers of anybody in the world. We have 16,500 season tickets of a 22,000 seat stadium. We've sold it out 7 times in a year and a half. We have over 50 million in sponsorship revenue committed, and that's by leading differently. So we believe that if you also want to lead with purpose and lead with values, it actually is good business, and we can prove it.
The first FIFA Women's World Cup was held in China in 1991 and it was won by Team USA, setting off a period of dominance. In 1999, the USA hosted the third edition of the FIFA Women's World Cup, taking the women's game to an entirely new level. The organising committee was chaired by a former gold medal Olympic swimmer, Donna de Verona, well connected and well credentialed. But now, 24 years on, what does Donna remember of that landmark 1999 FIFA World Cup?
I remember how nobody believed we could fill the biggest stadiums. And I do remember that I worked with some extraordinary men and women that decided we were going to go big. And I know that Sepp Blatter's been maligned and he's done whatever he's done, but he said, okay, USA, take it. And this was after the successful Men's World Cup. I mean, I was on the board of that organizing committee. And then I was asked after that by a man I'd worked with during the LA Olympics and then the Men's World Cup, if I would chair Women's World Cup. And at that time I was negotiating with ABC and I had 2 little children and I said, I just don't think I can do it. And then like 2 months later, I got a call from the man that hired me and said, you've got to do this. We need you. And, you know, that was because I'd started the Women's Sports Foundation in the United States. I'd worked in the US Senate on restructuring our Olympic movement. I'd worked on Title IX. And I'd been visible covering many Olympics for ABC. So in a way, I was the perfect match to be chairman. And I was the perfect fall person if it didn't work, which I realized later, but I didn't think about that.
What was the feeling like afterwards? Because you said there was little belief that this could happen, you know, that you wanted to fill the stadiums, that you really wanted to take it big. And what gave you that vision to believe it could happen? And then once it had happened, what did that feel like? Did you know then that women's football was just going to go upwards in a really steep trajectory?
We'd seen so much growth in the Olympic movement, and we witnessed the fan support of women's soccer during the Atlanta Olympics, which is what gave Sepp Blatter and FIFA the idea that maybe we could go big. What happened after we did go big and we were successful, a lot of the people that I'd worked with my whole life in television who always said, you know, women's sports is, you know, you got to make money and had every reason not to support us, their reasoning, not ours, said, well, it was a one-off. Like the Olympics, it was a one-off. And we did struggle after the World Cup success because the players wanted to launch a professional league like we'd done in women's basketball after the Atlanta Olympics. And unfortunately, those that took over the league, they spent money like drunken sailors on marketing and promotion. And we didn't do that. Our athletes during the World Cup did all the marketing and promotion. And they thought they could go big right away like the NFL, and it failed. And, you know, this is like the 4th iteration of what the Women's Professional League. And what was so sad about after was that the federation, whose leadership changed a bit, was so focused on the men's game, they didn't realize they could lose the women's game, which we're doing, to Europe, because that is their Super Bowl. I mean, that is the #1 sport in Europe. And in our country, because of Title IX and because we compete against football, women's football or women's soccer was the answer, because it's business. And I think FIFA finally realized the biggest growth, because they've done the data in the game, is with women's participation. And you've seen it explode all over Europe with UEFA and with the Lioness team in England. There wasn't even a team in 1999 from many teams from Europe. And now it's exploding.
Competing for the USA back in 1991 was goalkeeper Mary Harvey. She would later become FIFA's Director of Development. Now she's the CEO of the Swiss-based Centre for Sport and Human Rights.
When it comes to human rights, I mean, sport provides this opportunity to break through into mainstream discussion around human rights. You know, and a lot of countries, every country in the world has human rights challenges, and yet, you know, we talk about human rights and we're talking about sort of others, right? We don't look at ourselves often. We talk about human rights. And when it comes to sport and human rights, the coverage from investigative journalism and from civil society has resulted in a lot of awareness about human rights harms, risks, challenges in sport and things like the World Cup, the Olympic Games, what have you. And so as a result of all of that, as of 2023, we're entering this new era where we now have human rights requirements for events. We now have requirements to abide by the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. That's never been the case before. And so what we advocate for is, first of all, being aware of that and saying it's not any one person's responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility. All right, so what can you do, what can I do to advance human rights? And if it's broadcasters, we can talk about what that looks like. If it's sponsors, we can talk about what that looks like. And if it's FIFA or anybody else who's a sports body, it looks different. They're good people who work inside these sports bodies. It's actors like the center where we convene the ecosystem and we hold that space for dialogue. And it's others who advocate for change. But we need each other to make this happen. It's not anyone's responsibility, it's all of our responsibility.
When FIFA announced that this World Cup would be expanded from 24 to 32 nations, the naysayers thought there would be a series of one-sided walkovers. This tournament has proven anything but. Eleni Soltis reports.
Jamaica, Morocco, Nigeria and South Africa got the better of favourites like Brazil, Germany and Canada.
We've been hugely underestimated, obviously with the noise that was going outside of us playing and the lack of matches that we had leading into the tournament. I don't think anyone took us seriously.
Nor were they taken seriously at home. Since 2008, the Jamaican Football Federation has disbanded the women's national football team twice, until reggae heavyweights sang about it. Bob Marley's children put together a single and raised funds to keep the reggae girls afloat. And in 2019, they became the first Caribbean nation to attend a World Cup. Celebrity power aside, the reggae girls have honed their skills in overseas football leagues, including the American NWSL, England's Women's Super League, the Scottish Women's Premier League, France's Division 1 Féminine and Spain's Liga F. Nigeria's squad also has its foot in these major European leagues, as well as top-tier competitions in Turkey, China and Russia. Only one player is with a Nigerian football club. South Africa is the outlier, remaining mostly at home. 5 of them play with the top-ranked Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC in Pretoria, founded by a mining billionaire in 2009. Morocco is the first predominantly Arab or North African nation to qualify for the Women's World Cup. Their players are spread across various divisions in Europe, ranging from the highest women's football league in the Netherlands to 4th-tier competition in Spain. Almost a third of the team is still playing in Morocco.
We are the first Arabic country to qualify to the round of 16, and it is absolutely exceptional.
This football success has been described as the Wheel of the King. Last year, the Atlas Lionesses were runners-up in the Women's Africa Cup of Nations. By next year, Morocco wants to increase the number of women playing football to 90,000 and train thousands of female executives to run domestic football clubs. Just like the men, the top players will go where the money is, and with investment comes success. America used to be the land of milk and honey for talented women players, but not anymore. Now it's the European leagues that dominate, opening a convenient corridor for players from Africa and elsewhere.
Thanks for watching Ticket to the Cup. We leave you this week with some of the fans from all of the matches around Australia and New Zealand from the past week. And they've been such a crucial element in making this FIFA World Cup such a success. See you next time.
Jordan.